I think we've all become all too accustomed with the state of modern football right now in 2025, where it feels tactical systems, shapes and formations seem to have took over the footballing world, where the success of one side is dependent on how a team sets up in possession and out of possession, whether their fullbacks go inside or stay outside. But Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid are in a conundrum right now where the manager himself is in the biggest pickle of his own, where he feels his job is on the edge, with Florentino Perez circling as to whether he is the right man for the job at the Bernabeu. But Real Madrid as a club has made me question whether all of these tactical systems truly matter. Now, Xabi Alonso came in to Real Madrid off the back of an extremely impressive period with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany, winning the Bundesliga as an invincible in his first full season back in 23-24, which I think earned him the right, or let's say made him the chosen one for Florentino Perez as president of Los Blancos to go after Alonso and make him the man to replace Carlo Ancelotti. And that was will be no mean feat, rather. Ancelotti, with such an illustrious and decorated time at Real Madrid, most recently winning the Champions League at the end of the 23-24 season. But it looked like all sunshine and rainbows for Alonso at the start of his time at Real Madrid, having an extremely strong start, capped off by an impressive 2-1 win in the El Clasico back at the end of October. But it was from that moment on where it seemed like it all started to crumble. Post the Clasico win, Real were sitting pretty at the top of La Liga, 5 points clear of the rest. But it seemed from that moment on, it all started to fall apart. It was reported several of the big stars at the club were unhappy with Alonso's demanding management style. But we saw it by Leverkusen, his technical system, his formation, his flying wing-backs, that 3-4-3 that we saw Florian Wirtz shining and Jeremy Frimpong. Now, the Spaniard hasn't quite got around to implementing that style. He's run into issues trying to fit in the likes of Vinicius and Mbappe. Rodrigo only scored his first goal in 9 months against Manchester City last week. But it begs the question, and it brings up an interesting topic as to why Real Madrid are a club like no other. Back to the question we really want answered as to whether tactical systems in the modern game truly matter. Now, I think the default answer that most would go to would be, of course, we've seen the most successful sides over the last 10 years or so have a distinct way of playing, have a distinct setup on the pitch, and even the most casual of fan could see how a team wanted to play, whether it's been Pep Guardiola's dominant Manchester City side, or I think the Barcelona teams through the years have all played in a similar way. But this Real Madrid side, and I think more importantly, any Real Madrid side over the course of history have never really had a distinct stigma attached to them in terms of how they have played on the pitch. But the fact of the matter is they have always remained successful throughout the eras. And it begs the question as to why that is for Real Madrid and why they are so different to others. I think, to be honest, Xabi Alonso is unfortunate into the beast that he has entered in Real Madrid. I think, as I've mentioned, they are a club like no other, but we need to explore why that is. Because if we're looking at the modern sides and the best sides in the world at the moment, they have all afforded managers time to develop a so-called project. Looking at PSG with Luis Enrique, who was given the responsibility and given the authority to move out the biggest stars that were at the club in Neymar and Mbappe eventually, and Lionel Messi. In Arsenal with Mikel Arteta is probably the most prominent example in the modern game today. Now one of the best sides in Europe, top of the Premier League, but looking at where they were when he started, very, very few clubs, especially those at the top of the food chain, would have allowed a manager that time, given the results early on in the process. Especially, rather, other examples in the likes of Liverpool with Jurgen Klopp, giving him almost a decade in the job, and that saw success with a Premier League and a Champions League title. But at Real Madrid, we have never seen that. We have never seen a manager given that much time to develop a so-called project, to develop a successful and winning formula in terms of that style of football on the pitch, because Real Madrid have never had it. Because the only thing that matters at the Bernabeu is winning, is silverware, especially in Europe. And that is, I think, why Florentino Perez has been the president for so long. And I think it's why we've never seen managers have extended periods at the club. Even the likes of Carlo Ancelotti, who was so successful. He, before his last Champions League win with Madrid, were at moments in the season struggling and under pressure, under real pressure, like we see Xabi Alonso under right now. Fact of the matter is, and to answer the overall question, at Real Madrid, tactical systems don't matter, and it never has. And to be honest, I don't think it ever will. They've always hired managers, and they've never really gone for a coach like a Xabi Alonso, who I think displayed his excellent coaching at Bayer Leverkusen. But I think what the Spaniard will come to learn, and will have to learn pretty quickly if he wants to stay in the job, is that he will have to transform his style. He will have to become more of a manager who has to manage egos, who has to manage the biggest stars. And even though Real have changed their approach in the transfer market from back in the day of signing those Galacticos like Ronaldo and Beckham, I think even signing the younger stars like they have done with Jude Bellingham and with Vinicius Jr., they have developed into the biggest and best players in the world, or some of them in fact, and they will develop egos, and we've seen it this season. Problems with Vinicius Jr. and no doubt problems with Kylian Mbappe and Jude Bellingham. These guys think they are the best players in the world, and Xabi Alonso will have to find a way to adapt his management style to stay in the job at the Bernabeu.